Our next amazing presentation comes from Brianna Cotugno. She is a manager of revenue assurance at Warner Music Group, working with data to monetize WMG masters in the neighboring rights space. Her career in the music industry began in her early teens, thanks to MySpace and live concerts at the Long Island venue, The Crazy Donkey. After years of street teaming, attending concerts, promoting artists, and selling merchandise, Brianna attended Albright College to pursue a bachelor's in music business and communication. While at Albright, she devoted her time to Lion Enterprises, Alternative Spring Break, and the admission office. Following graduation in 2015, Brianna worked full-time as a licensing and data management agent at the Harry Fox Agency for several years prior to joining WMG in 2018. While Brianna is not working, attending concerts, or listening to music, she is watching reality TV, traveling, or petting dogs. Please help me welcome Brianna Cotugno.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna. I'm so excited to be speaking with all of you. And as Trent said before, we're so sorry that we can't be meeting with you in person, but it's awesome that we're able to do this online. So yeah, let me start. First of all, I just want to say Trent did an amazing job. I feel like as much as I know about shows, I just learned so much more. So that was awesome. And overall, I just want to say I'm excited to see Jenna and Paul present as well. I believe this might be the first music business forum where I might not have met the students yet. I graduated in technically 2015. I was supposed to be the class of 2016, but I graduated a semester early. So I might have missed most of you. I did work in the admission office though, so I might have seen some of you on tours if you were on campus before 2015. So a little bit about myself. I'm Brianna, I'm from Long Island, and I am currently the manager of the revenue assurance department at Warner Music Group in New York City. So I'll get into that a little bit more to explain what some of that means later on. And I just want to share, I graduated from Albright with a degree in music business and communications, as AJ said. I was on the executive board of Lion Records as well as Alternative Spring Break. So those were probably some of my favorite memories on campus. I loved putting on the Albright Idol competitions as well as the Music Business Forum. That was one of my favorites. The first one that Albright ever had was my freshman year, and I helped put that on. And I remember meeting Paul at the first one, and it's great that now we're both presenting together. We also happen to work at the same company, so I do see him in the elevator once in a while as well. So it's crazy to see how it's come full circle. Also at that first music business forum was the president of the Harry Fox Agency, which is funny because he was my mentor last year or a couple of years ago when I was working at the Harry Fox Agency. So I cannot stress enough how important these forums are, and I hope you're all enjoying them. So I also said Alternative Spring Break, just wanted to give a little shout out to that as well. That was such a big part of my campus experience. I loved it. And I also got to help with the concert committee for SGA. So we brought in the Plain White Tees and Nico and Vince and Cartel, which was a really cool one for me. As you'll learn throughout this talk, I absolutely love all of the Warped Tour bands, the emo music scene. So we'll get into some of that as well. So I have 3 different parts of my presentation that I'm going to share with you. As you can see on my screen, royalties and relationships and royalties are my main focus. So as much as I'm sure this is a great distraction from what's going on in the world, I do want to share some more about how it's impacted the industry, just ways that you can stay active in the industry. I know right now internship programs are being canceled and there aren't as many things that you can do. You can't go to shows, different things. So how to stay active in the music industry while you're home. And I also want to have a little conversation about, how I started in the music industry. AJ said as he said, I was in the industry for at least 10 years now. I started when I was 13, just helping out bands. So I want to share how that all started. I love the background stories. I listened to plenty of podcasts about it. Highly suggest The Lead Singer Syndrome if you're interested in hearing how a lot of musicians got their breaks in the industry, how they write songs and all of that. And then my third part is the royalties. Definitely not the sexiest part of the music industry, but as I've worked in the industry, I've learned so much about different roles and different places. And there are so many job opportunities in the industry that I didn't even know existed. And royalties is something I fell into and I love it. And I want to share some information on that and how you can get into that. Okay. So let's start with building relationships. So the first thing I have here is how can I build my network without leaving my house? So I know we're all in the same position right now. I haven't left my house in over 3 weeks. So everyone I'm sure is getting a little stir crazy. Of course, I want to preface this with you do not have to be productive. You do not have to feel like you need to do more work than you are. I know it's crazy times, we're all adjusting, but if you are looking for some things to do without leaving your home, whether it's during quarantine or self isolation or in general. So these are things that I check in on every couple of days just to see what's going on in the industry, make new friends, see different ways that maybe I can connect with people. So I know first, networking was a word that I was afraid of for a while. I thought it was a little intimidating. I didn't know how to necessarily network. I didn't want to talk about myself for too much or throw myself at people and make them feel like they need to talk to me. I know I felt pretty awkward during it, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. I try to think of it as just building relationships, making friends, learning about people. And when you turn it from networking and small talk into just learning more about the industry and taking it as like an educational and friendship approach, it definitely does wonders. So that being said, we're living in a digital age. Social media is super helpful for the industry. I know we're all seeing the Instagram lives, the Twitch streams, the Facebook, TikTok, all of that. So musicians are definitely staying active. If you're a musician, I highly suggest kind of getting into some of that, seeing ways that you can build your brand, connect with fans, make new fans, and connect with other artists as well if you want to join one of those live streams or talk to them. But the biggest thing as a music business professional that I find helpful are Facebook groups. So I know a lot of people say Facebook is a little outdated. It's for, our parents and things like that. But I am in several groups and they've been extremely helpful on finding new opportunities, helping friends find jobs or internships. And some of those, there's a few women focused ones for women in the industry, Girls Behind the Rock Show, Women in Music, and Women Crush Music. Those organizations are awesome. I highly suggest them, and I can definitely send links later on. Those groups have some great opportunities to connect with musicians, to connect with music business professionals, as well as students that are just trying to get some experience and learn more. There are also some other great ones for all genders, like the music industry. I think it's called Career Networking Group, Music Business Besties. There's a bunch of fun ones. And then what events can I attend to build my network? So once we're all able to leave our homes, for me, concerts were a big one. I loved meeting fans at concerts. When shows are small enough that you can meet the bands, I definitely, when I was younger, would talk to all of the crew members, talk to the merch people, talk to everyone around the venue and see what they do, if they liked it, what kind of shows they have been working on. I would talk to security, everyone. I just was so fascinated. There's also a cool story about some events that um, I used to go to shows, as AJ said, at the Crazy Donkey on Long Island, and there was a guy that would be at every show, and I would see him for 10 years on. Every show I'd go to, he'd be there. Forever the Sickest Kids, All Time Low, all those bands. He'd be side stage at the shows, and he started a radio show. And as the years gone by, we've known each other, and we started getting to know each other more. And it was just so awesome that we could have this relationship. And then 2 months ago, I'm walking in the office at Warner and he's standing there. There are people that will come back into your life. The industry is small, so definitely if you see these people, say hello, introduce yourself, get to know them because they'll probably come back. And now I am working with him on trying to get one of our artists on his radio show. So things like that happen and it's awesome. Um, and then some other great events, the Music Business Forum, like I said, a huge event to build your network. It Also, take advantage of all the students around you. There are so many great relationships that you can make. Trent is one of my good friends. I love working with him at college, and I love talking to him. And it's great to see everything that he's been doing. And I feel like I always learn from him when I talk to him. Stay in touch with those people. There are also some great Albright alumni in New York that I talk to as much as I can. And we have a meetup and all different things. And definitely stay in touch with people, see what they're up to, whether it's just following them on Instagram or being friends on social media or hanging out and getting to know each other, maybe starting your own company, whatever it could be. Take advantage of the relationships that you have in front of you. All of these students are passionate and have a drive to work in the industry that you want to work in. So definitely make sure you build that. And then also some more events. There's the Launch Music Conference, which they have in Pennsylvania. So I went to that. It was great. Kevin Lyman from Warped Tour was there. There were a bunch of other great speakers about sync, about record deals, about touring. And it's great to hear that and meet with other people. Also, highly suggest volunteering at these events. That's a great way to meet other people that are aspiring to be in the industry and want to start working in it and kind of get some other things on your resume. And then going back to without leaving your home, what you can do, how can you get experience in the music industry online? So this is definitely a super cool thing that I've been finding on those Facebook groups I was talking about. I have seen so many job postings, internship postings, volunteer. So if you're interested in blogging, writing, photography, doing interviews with bands, writing reviews, any of that, highly suggest joining some of these Facebook groups. There's so many opportunities, and some of them are paid, some are not paid. Other opportunities, if you're interested in management or social media, graphic design, if you are interested in making music videos or animation, whatever it may be. There's also opportunities on these groups as well. And another big thing that I suggest and I've done and it's worked in my favor is send some emails to musicians that you like. DM them on Instagram or send an email, say, I'm a fan of your music and I like to work with you. Maybe it's a local group or a band that doesn't have as big of a following and you're looking and you're saying like, I really wish they did this in their social media or different things here and there that might help you out. So I think that would be something helpful. Um, one second, sorry, I'm seeing that there is a question. For some reason, I cannot view the question. Okay, I don't know if you're seeing this, so sorry if you are. So what do you recommend for someone who wants to stand out on social media or in conversation when they're doing it? Um, so yeah, to stand out, be yourself is the biggest thing. I would say um, definitely it's great to talk yourself up. I think, the elevator pitches are hard, but say what you're able to do. Don't be shy with it. Something I've always been modest and I won't say, oh, I can definitely do that, or I'm not afraid to, whatever. I used to be so afraid of just saying like, hey, I'm great at this. And finally, I was like, you know what? I love music. I love helping people. And I'm going to tell them I'm great. So try not to be shy. A way to stand out with resumes, business cards, some of those types of things. I try to add some color and personality to it. Um, I also think it's great to have follow up, send emails. And if you know things about the person, don't be afraid to tell them, like, I love the company that you work at, or talk about an article that they've posted. Do your research if you know that you're meeting someone. But if it's just um, a situation where you don't know the person and you're just meeting for the first time, definitely share the things you're working on. If there's a cool project at school, or share your view on something going on in the industry. It shows a lot of courage, first, just talking to the person in general. I think I remember everyone that comes up to me and just will ask me a question, but also just show that you're interested and try to engage in the conversation. I think that will go a long way. And then um, going into how to get experience in the music industry online for part of that. So I was talking about if you're passionate about things, what I did, I sent an email to an artist that I liked and I said, hey, I'm interested in getting into social media. I majored in public relations, but I haven't done much with it. And I'd like to get some volunteering or internship under my belt while I'm working just to kind of stay active. From there, I started running all of her social media. I did all of the content and digital strategy for her. And she got 2 albums on the Billboard charts. So some of these opportunities happen. And from there, I started learning how to make a music video, how to edit lyric videos, things like that. And those experiences will come. So don't be afraid to just send that email and do that cold call or whatever it is. And I think it'll go a long way. So that was a little bit about building relationships. Sorry if it was a little all over the place. I'm learning technology and as we all are. So I will go on to the next slide, tell you more about myself, why I'm here, and why the music industry. So as far as my background information, so why the music industry? Why did I want to work here? So I have been passionate about music for as long as I can remember. I remember going to my first concert somewhat because I was 5. We saw the Backstreet Boys and I fell asleep during their second song. So I remember my parents were very upset. I did love the show in general, but I've never fallen asleep at a show since. Something my parents just really built this love and interest in music. And my dad on record release day, which used to be on Tuesdays and not Fridays, on those Tuesdays, my dad would come with a brand new CD as much as he could based on like which music he thought I liked. So it would be the Aaron Carter, the Backstreet Boys, you know, Britney Spears, whoever. But the one that really stood out to me and like the first time I really was like into the music industry was when I was like 8 or 9 and the Simple Plan album, No Helmet, No Pads, Just Balls came out. And definitely not child appropriate for an 8-year-old, but my dad brought it in and was kind of like, I don't know if I should give this to you, but here. And it ended up being an album that my whole family loved and still a band that we love and go and see. So that kind of started it. And then as in my intro that AJ mentioned, social media did it too. So loved music, was going to concerts all throughout my childhood. And then something happened. I got a MySpace, and me and my best friend started connecting with these bands. We were talking to people in bands. We were talking to fans. We were learning about concerts before. Like it used to be, my parents would see that there was a concert coming out and they'd buy a ticket if they thought I'd want to go. But now it's I'm hearing about bands that I like, and I'm seeing the concert listing. I'm learning about music venues. And from there, I started going to shows, and I went to my first concert without my parents. It was me and my best friend. We were 13, and we went to the Crazy Donkey, which I'll probably mention a lot. And it was the band Cute is What We Aim For. They were signed to Fueled by Ramen, one of my favorite labels. And we got to meet the band and we got to see this awesome show. And I remember the huge crowd and just the energy, and it was so infectious. And from then I probably went to hundreds of concerts since, several for that band. And let's see, I see another question coming in. So the standard record release day changed. I believe the shift was because of streaming. I don't have the actual answer. So between now and the panel later on, I believe Paul will have the answer to this question. Oh, AJ's answering. Great. Oh, skipping through. Sorry, everyone. My mouse is acting up today. Okay. So as I talked about, going to concerts. And then from there, I started street teaming. So I met a bunch of different fans that were as passionate about the music industry as I was. And we would go to all these shows together. We started a group called Front Row or Don't Go. We would wait outside shows for hours. And it was awesome. We saw so many different groups that I still love and are on all of my emo night playlist. Yeah, so then, as I said, street teaming, and it was putting up posters, making stickers, meeting local bands and becoming a part of the local music scene. And then I started street teaming for the record label Capital EMI, which is no longer one of the major labels. And from there, I just started networking, meeting more people. I booked some of my first concerts. One of the shows I was really proud of booking with one of my best friends was the band Paris, who is now opening for Halsey. So it's just awesome to see some of these bands and how big they're getting. So those are some of my experiences early on. I was the merch girl for a couple of bands doing social media, and then it got to the point where I was picking a college and I wasn't sure what to do. I applied to a bunch of different ones, and Albright stood out to me. I visited the campus, I sat in on a class. I think I visited the campus 3 times, which is quite the drive from New York for going 3 times, but it was so worth it. And I just fell in love. And in 2012, is when they brought Lion Records back. It was like somewhat existing, but we really built it up the couple of years before I started. And then once I got on campus, it was like really growing. And we got to go to recording studios, and we did photo shoots and different shows and experiences. And it was definitely an awesome experience. I loved going to Albright. I miss it dearly. I've learned so much, and it really built me for where I ended up being. So from there, during my, I believe, freshman or sophomore year, I entered at a venue called the Emporium. So there I did promotion, I did street teaming, I was a runner, so I got to get bagels for Scotty McCreery and some other artists. And it was just a great way to learn the behind the scenes. And then leading up to my first job, I got an internship my senior year at the Harry Fox agency. And I initially applied for a marketing internship, which they said they already found the person for marketing. And they asked me if I'd be interested in licensing and data management. So I remembered learning about licensing, and it was interesting, but something I wasn't fully into. I didn't really know as much about it as I thought I did. And it was something that was kind of still like, I got it, but didn't fully understand. And I was like, okay, well, maybe. So I started learning more about licensing, and I was like, okay, maybe I will take this internship. But the other part of it was data management. I knew how to use Excel, but barely in a way that was data management. And I was like, I don't even know how to manage data or what data truly is. So I remember being like, I think I'm a little in over my head. But I was like, this is an opportunity and I'm going to take it. So I did, and I was really proud of myself. And it was in New York City. I interned there for a few months. It was an awesome program. I took advantage of it. I set up one-on-ones with a lot of people in the company, the head of like business development, marketing, because I was initially interested in that. And from there, I learned how much I really do like licensing and data management, especially the data. I was learning a lot of Excel tricks, and I was becoming comfortable with large data sets. And also just understanding what data is and what the licensing aspects are and what a mechanical license is, which I'll get into. And it was something I met so many great people and I loved it. So I made sure to connect with everyone. I shared my contact information before I left. One of the big things that I suggest doing if you're at an internship, write thank you notes on your last day. It's definitely a way to make an impression. I had little notes to everyone, thanking them for the things that they taught me and telling them when I was graduating, because you never know. So it's good to stay up to date with all of that and connect with people and keep that going. So then I went back to campus. My internship ended in August. I started school a couple of weeks later, and I got a call, and I asked my boss at the Harry Fox agency for a recommendation for a job. I was applying to a job, I believe, at Sony, and she said, "Hey, I would love to give you a recommendation. I'll do it for you. But also, would you like to work in our department?" So they had an opening, and I was so excited. I got to join the team right away. So this is not a typical situation in the industry. And I don't want you to think that this is just an easy thing that will happen for everyone, and it's tough. But it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I took it, and I was so excited. I joined that team, and I worked there full time for 3 years. Something really cool about my experience in the industry is so far in the past 5 years, I've not had the same role in each year. So it has changed every single year. I went from intern to working there full time, to part time to full time. And then I was promoted to a senior agent, which I ran all of our data management team. So that was an amazing experience. And then following my time at or during after 3 years, I found an opportunity at the Warner Music Group that I couldn't say no to. It just seemed like a great fit and a great team. So I joined the revenue assurance and IRI team. So I manage the revenue assurance. The IRI is a section of our department as well. We're a very small team. We're 3 or 4 people, depending on if we have an intern at the time. So we are growing, but at the moment, it's just the 3 of us. Revenue assurance is driven by me and my one coworker. And what we do is work in the neighboring rights space. So I'm going to get into all of that in royalties. I'm not going to confuse you yet. So what we do is make claims on behalf of Warner Music Group. So we are responsible for asserting Warner's claims on tracks and making revenue, as well as working on claims conflicts at the local society Sound Exchange, which is the US society. And I think it's been a great opportunity so far, and I've been promoted to manager in the past few months, and it's been a great challenge, and really excited to share more once we get into royalties. The other side of our department, which I think is amazing, is called the IRI. So something that might sound a little confusing, so bear with me, is that Warner is a huge company. So we have labels all over the globe. So we have a Warner Music Denmark, we have Warner Music South Africa, Australia, Canada, Brazil, all different offices. There are so many. We work with 38 of we call them affiliates, the different countries under Warner Music Group. So this part of the department, there are artists that are signed to, Warner UK or Warner Australia that are not picked up by a US label, which means that their music is not being released in the US. Our department releases all of the music that is not being picked up by the US label that is being released by Warner Music affiliates that are non-US. So some of those examples that are now getting a little bit bigger, before she was signed to Atlantic, Maisie Peters was a part of our department, and now she's huge. Her streaming numbers are incredible. One of my favorite artists, Lewis Watson, was once a part of the IRI. Also Scott Hellman, who's a big act from Canada. They're all building, and it's so great. And our goal is to build these artists in the US, build their presence, and then hope that they get signed by a major label so they can get in the US so they can get some placements. So that is a big summary of who I am. And sorry if it was a little wordy. We are all social distancing, so I haven't had as many conversations as I'm used to. So that is my background, and now I want to get into some royalties. If you have any questions at all during this, please let me know. I'm going to answer all questions at the end just so we can flow through it and then make sure that we have time for questions. And after that, we will also have the panel, so I'm happy to answer anything then as well. And I did mention to AJ, if anyone does have questions for me or wants to have a one-on-one or has anything that they want to discuss with me, I'd be happy to set up one-on-ones, whether it's call, video, email, whatever works best. And I definitely will be happy to share all of that with you. All right, so now getting into royalties, hopefully. So introduction to royalties. So right here, don't get too scared by the text. The picture in the center is where we want to start. So there is a song called Love Me the Same. The artist is Dan Kaplan. It's a great song. If you haven't heard of it, I highly suggest it. So there are two parts of the song, or two copyrights. So the first one is the underlying composition. So this song is called Love Me the Same. It's written by Daniel S. Kaplan, who is also the artist, and the publisher is BMG Rights Management. The underlying composition is the song that is written. So it's the lyrics, it's the melody, it's the music, it's the music that's written. And that's the underlying composition. On the other side of it is the sound recording or the master recording. I like to just call it the master. So in case there's any confusion, please let me know. The song here is Love Me the Same by the artist Dan Kaplan, and the label or the rights owner is Atlantic UK. So the sound recording is what you're listening to. So if you're streaming that music, it's what you hear. If you are buying the CD or getting the vinyl, what you're listening to is that sound recording. So once it's in that format, it's a sound recording. The underlying composition is what that written song is. I'm seeing some questions, so I know this can get confusing. So, okay. Now, under these two different copyrights, there are different royalties involved. So first, let me just, in case there's any confusion what a royalty is, I want to make sure everything is as clear as possible because it can get a bit confusing. So a royalty is the sum of money paid to a copyright owner. So it's for each performance or play or unit of a song that's sold, each stream. So there are royalties or money that is paid based on certain rights and based on kind of what is happening to the song, whether it's being played in public or whether it's being recorded or released. So I'm going to get into that in a little finer detail here. So, all right. Royalties for composition. So that's songwriting, that song that's written, that underlying composition. Who receives the royalties for the underlying composition? So the royalties for the written song goes to that songwriter, so it would be Dan Kaplan, and then the publisher, who is BMG Rights Management in this case. So the royalties for that composition would go to the two of them. There are two different types of royalties that an underlying composition is entitled to. The first one is a mechanical royalty, which is what I worked on at the Harry Fox Agency, or HFA, in case I do use the acronym. So mechanical royalties are something that a lot of people get confused about. And I think I'm going to try to explain it the simplest way as possible. So what it is, so first I'll start with some little facts. It was started in 1909 through the Copyright Act. So what it is the money that's paid to the copyright owner, so that songwriter and that publisher, for the manufacture or distribution of a sound recording of that song. So what it is, in the US specifically, a song must be licensed to anyone who wants to use it in a phonorecord. So if this underlying composition is used in a song, so if it's on a CD, an MP3, if it's going to be streamed, there's a royalty involved that needs to be paid to those songwriters. So it is required when a composition is released through a sound recording. So overall, it's just money getting paid if if a recording of the song is being released. Who pays the royalties? So the royalties can get paid out by usually just two different options for here. So one of the main things on who will pay the royalties, the labels. So for the most part, if the label is just distributing an album that has songs with the underlying compositions, so if they're distributing an album, they need to pay the royalties on each underlying composition for those songs. So say it's just a single and Warner UK is releasing the Dan Kaplan track, they are going to pay royalties to Dan Kaplan and his publisher, BMG Rights Management. And this typically is the case when it comes to releasing physical versions of a song. So if it's a CD, if it's a vinyl, an MP3 or download, It can get a little tricky because now with streaming, of course, this law was started, the Copyright Act was started in 1909. Streaming did not exist, and there have been some updates through the years. But with streaming, it still can get a little tricky. Right now, on demand or interactive streaming services such as Spotify are actually responsible for acquiring the licenses for the songs on their service. So Spotify will get send over a list of all of these songs, and I'll tell you where they're collected. So they'll send those lists, and they will get licenses for each of those songs, which will in turn pay out the money to the songwriters and publishers for all of the songs on their service. So how can these get collected? So who is Spotify or the label sending these requests to, or the licenses is what they're called, in order to pay out the royalties? So there are two different options for this as well. So the first one are collection societies. So the Harry Fox Agency being one of them. There's also MRI. Those are two of the biggest collection societies at the moment. In the US. There are other societies around the world. So I'm going to talk specifically about the US royalties. So HFA, or the Harry Fox Agency, and MRI, they collect and distribute mechanical licenses and royalties. So they have a system or a rights management system where they collect this data. They work with the publishers and the songwriters to get songs registered into their songs. So they have a database of all of the tracks. So they will have what the splits are. So maybe there's a song with multiple songwriters on it. So, if, say, I wrote a song with Trent, the two of us would be on there as well as both of our publishers. So that's one of the options, is going through a collection society. Another option is going straight to the publisher and songwriter. So the label and the publisher and songwriter can create a deal. Some of the times it will reduce the royalty rate, so they won't have to pay as much. Other times it could be a deal that they have ongoing, or maybe there is something like, there could be a special event going on, or if it's for a charity, or a university is recording a song that they want to put on an album, or something like that, they could possibly have a deal with the label and the publisher to work on the song for free. So there are some ways around that as well. And then the last section I have for mechanical royalties is, how is this impacted by the MMA, the Music Modernization Act? So I'm sure many of you have heard about this. I know this has been a large topic for a while now, and I believe it was finally passed about a year ago. And part of that is the Mechanical Licensing Collective, or the MLC, which is responsible for all of the mechanical royalties and licensing for the industry in the US. So the Harry Fox Agency was just selected a couple of months ago, and it's going to be a great project for them. It's awesome. They already have a huge database to work on already. So they'll be working with the labels and the publishers and songwriters to make sure all of these songs are registered. So right now, the way that mechanical royalties work in the US is that it's on a song-by-song basis. So you will need to pay those royalties for each song. So most of the time, these songs will get a unique ID in, the HFA system. And then the label will come and license that song. Now, with the new MLC, they want to do a blanket license. So instead of having to do track by track, you'll just pay a set fee and it will go towards these songs. So that's the biggest change. And another thing that I think is a great change is that now there will be a public database. So the public will be able to access all of the tracks that are currently available in the HFA system to make sure that their tracks are on there, to make sure their shares are correct, to make sure that all of the songwriters are listed, and make sure the data is as clean as possible. So I think that's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it. And I guess now that we've talked about mechanical licenses, my role at the Harry Fox Agency was to license so I worked directly with the labels and publishers to make sure. With the publishers, the data management side was to make sure all of their shares were registered in our system, to make sure all of the song data was correct. One of my main projects was to make sure there were no duplicates in the system, which is a hard thing to do. So that was one of my main responsibilities. And then licensing those. So there's a bulk licensing system, and there's also, track by track. The bulk licensing system would be if Spotify or a label or other streaming service sent in a file with all of the tracks that are on their system. It would run through a matching system, and then we would review it, and it would license to those tracks in our system. So that was about mechanical royalties. There's a lot to it, and definitely an interesting space in the industry. And then the other side of it are performance royalties. So performance royalties is money that is generated for a performance or a broadcast of an underlying composition. So if it's played at a concert, if your song is being played in a hotel or a bar, if it's being played in a store, any of that, this money is going to be paid out to the songwriter and publisher. So the royalties are paid by the venue. So usually these are blanket licenses. So the venue will pay a blanket license to, I'll tell you where they're collected in a second. So they'll pay a blanket license. It could be the store. It could also be a bowling alley, whoever it is, whoever's playing the songs, and then broadcasters as well. So whoever's playing the song on the radio, they will have to pay these royalties, which are collected at performance rights organizations. So ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So as I said, they're blanket licenses that usually get paid to them and then will go to the publisher and songwriter. So if you are a songwriter and you have your music being released, I highly suggest registering your songs at a PRO, as well as registering it at a collection society like HFA and MRI, to make sure that you're getting the royalties that are due to you. And another cool thing with the PROs, so if you're performing these songs, you can log into their system, put in your performances, which songs you were able to play, and it's an easier way to try to get your songs in there to register for those royalties. Yeah, so that was the royalties for compositions. Now I'm going to get into the royalties for the master recording or the sound recording. So who receives royalties for the master recording? These royalties go to the artist and the label. So these royalties are typically split in half between the artist and the label or the master recording owner. There are times where the artist could also own the master. So sometimes they might get that 100%, but for the most case in my day-to-day, it is the 50% between the artist and the label. So this is where it gets a little tricky. I'm sure you've heard the term neighboring rights, and we just talked about performance royalties. So public performance and broadcast royalties, the same as performance royalties, are called neighboring rights when it refers to a sound recording. So it's pretty much the same. It is royalties that are generated based on the public performance of a work. So if it's on the radio, if it's being performed, if you hear it at a store, those types of things, it's now going to be paid to the sound recording or the owner of that sound recording. In this space, it's called neighboring rights. It's just a way to differentiate so you know that it's for the sound recording versus the underlying composition. So these royalties are paid again from the broadcasters, from from the store, from the television network, whatever it is that is using these tracks. And then how can these be collected? So in the US, there is only one place where these royalties are collected, which is Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange was created, I believe, in 2000, which then they began in 2003. So this is part of Congress. And I believe there was a certain act that started it. Let me see. Yeah, so they started in 2003, and they are responsible for collecting these royalties. The US is a little different than the rest of the world. It's not as far ahead as far as these royalties. Right now, the royalties that are collected in the neighboring rights space in the US are typically internet radio and cable TV, as well as non-interactive web and streaming. So SiriusXM, iHeartRadio, radio stations, some different radio stations as well. Mostly Sirius, iHeart, and I believe Clear Channel as well, which I believe is iHeart now, and Pandora. So those are some examples on who would be paying in the US. There is a big fight in the industry to kind of expand that. In the rest of the world, it is pretty typical with the types of royalties that you'll be seeing on the other side. So the reason I wanted to share more about neighboring rights is this is the new space that I'm working in. This is my day-to-day now, is what I've been doing. Neighboring rights are huge in the industry. I think they're probably one of the most underrated parts. The public performance broadcast royalties are 14% of the industry, so of the industry's global revenue. And it's a $2 billion revenue source in the industry. And a lot of people barely know what it is. Right now, there are even deals going on. So Lewis Capaldi, who's one of the biggest artists right now, dominating the charts, just signed a neighboring rights deal with Cobalt, which is something that I have never seen before and is becoming more relevant and becoming a bigger deal in the industry because people are starting to realize the money that is sitting there and the opportunities. So I got into a little bit about what these neighboring rights royalties are and who pays them, and started with Sound Exchange, getting into what they do. So how their system works is that broadcasters will send in their data and they'll share all of the songs that they're reporting from what they've been playing. The labels and the master rights owners, and which are called rights owners at Sound Exchange, and the artists are able to register their songs as well. If the songs match, that revenue will go to that artist or that or the rights owner. So very similar to the rights that we were talking about before with the matching system and the reporting, but now the revenue is going to the rights owner, which the owner of the master recording, which in my case is Warner Music Group for the work that I've been doing. And this is on a quarterly basis at Sound Exchange that the revenue is paid out. They have really changed in the last few years. They have a new portal going on, which has made it very easy to claim songs on their system, which would be asserting your rights owners, your rights on those tracks. So what my day-to-day is working with Sound Exchange to make sure that Warner's being paid for all of the tracks that they have rights for. So it's working with other rights owners. There can be conflicts. So maybe another major label or another rights owner is claiming a track that is a Warner track. If they're claiming, Shape of You by Ed Sheeran, that's definitely a Warner-owned track. So resolving those. We also we call it a treasure hunt in my department. It's working to find more revenue and finding that incremental revenue for the department to all of the tracks that might not be paying us. So there's plenty of different claiming exercises, and it brings in all of my data skills. And it's been a lot of fun and definitely something great. And I'm glad that now I get to manage this department and grow within that. So that's the Sound Exchange part. There are plenty of societies around the globe. Some others that I work with, I assist in neighboring rights around the globe as well. So I've been helping Germany, which they have GVL. I've been helping Warner Brazil, which is ECAD is their society. The UK has PPL. Canada has Resound. And for the people that do not have the teams around the globe to work with these societies one-on-one, Sound Exchange also does have reciprocal agreements where you can register your songs in their system, and there's an option for them to assert your claim around the globe. So then you won't have to go to every society around the world and work with them, but that's also an option if you are interested. So that is my little spiel on neighboring rights. And again, I have one more slide and then I'm happy to answer any questions. And my final example, so this is kind of like a little fun example I wanted to end it with, just to go over once again the difference between an underlying composition and the master recording. So in the middle, I have a cover. There's a song called Let Me Love You, which is originally performed by Mario. A Warner Denmark artist, Drew, covered it. absolutely love it. Um, and this song, the underlying composition is, again, the song Let Me Love You. The composers there are Cameron, Schaefer, and Scott. So the three of them, and the publishers are Universal, Reservoir, and EMI. So that one underlying composition can have multiple sound recordings associated to it. So the sound recordings associated that I'm showing as an example are the cover that Drew did, as well as the original version by Mario. And the royalty types involved. So for both of these tracks, both of them being released means that that underlying composition will have licenses for both. So that one underlying composition, those publishers and those songwriters are going to get the mechanical and performance royalties on the underlying composition song for both of those versions of the song. Now on the master recording side, there are two different masters here. So there's two different sound recordings. So one is Drew's version, one is Mario. So they're going to get they're both going to get royalties, but for their versions of the song. So I thought that was a cool way to differentiate what I've been talking about. And I believe that's it now. And I guess one last thing I wanted to share that I didn't yet is just, I've learned there's so many different avenues to go in the music industry, and so many I didn't even know existed. I did not know that there was a future in data management and rights management for me, and it's definitely a great workspace. And there's so many departments that I work with daily that I didn't know existed. There are full teams for content, which is awesome. There are teams that work specifically with each streaming service to make sure that the songs are getting registered correctly and pitching the songs for playlisting. And the amount of legal teams that I've worked with, as well as, you know, a team that works on their YouTube and content strategy. There's so many different avenues to go in, and I'm excited to see what all of you do. So, all right. Last thing here, thanks for listening, and any questions, which I did see a good amount popping in. So I will get to those. Let's see. Okay. What advice would I give for the first week on the job? So the first thing that I would do, let's see, my first week on the job, and something that a lot of them told me was helpful, was that I asked all the right questions. You know, you don't have to pretend you know what you're doing. I barely knew what my new job was when I started in claims management in the revenue assurance department. You know, a lot of people say fake it till you make it. Sometimes that's the truth, but overall, ask the right questions. You don't want to be stuck in a job where you don't know what you're doing. And it's impressive to then show that you're getting a great understanding and building. Definitely connect with the team, ask them all what they do on a day-to-day. Something else that was really cool for me my first week on the job was just to, you know, sit and talk with people. There isn't always the most amount of work to do, so it's to show that you're good at keeping busy. Ask to see if you can join in on some meetings so you can get some time to understand what they're doing. And I think those are some great options. And then my next question, what would you say most people in the industry are genuine and want themselves as well? Oh, what I say that most people in the industry are genuine and want themselves as well as others to succeed. Definitely, I think for the most part, the majority of people that I've met are helping others. You know, some of the music, the women in music and some of the women focus groups that I've been talking about, huge on that. But there are some people, I'm not going to lie, there were some people that weren't as excited to push me up to the top and thought of me as competition, or thought that other people were more of a competition, which really hurt them and not necessarily me. So I think, you know, one of the biggest things I have to say is be kind to everyone, and kindness will come your way, and definitely push to other people. And I think what I want to see is all the people around me to succeed, and that's how a company really thrives. So I'd say definitely push forward, and kindness wins. Oh, got a question about the emo scene. Very excited. Let's see. um, I have not heard of the band Eat Your Heart Out. I will have to listen. So thank you for that suggestion. I'm writing that down right now. Okay. So, what was my favorite thing to do when it came out with helping out other bands, social media, merch, other opportunities? I loved it all. I think one of my favorites was selling merch at Warped Tour for a couple of the dates. That was definitely the coolest. I thought I got to connect with so many fans and I got to just network and get to see all of the shows. So that was the coolest opportunity. But then my favorite was just helping my friends. I think my friends in the bands, it was the coolest things. They got to play some great shows. They were opening for bands like Hawthorne Heights and some other like big emo groups. It was great to be able to be there for it and help them promote it, as well as just kind of helping them prepare for these big shows. Do I believe my skills? I've learned any skills, let's see, that I use now while taking classes at Albright. Yes, definitely. One of the big things and the reason why I loved that it was a liberal arts college was the amount of English classes we took. My email etiquette, I think, is one of the most helpful things. I took a couple of English classes that really prepared me on just writing a great email. And that's something that I've learned has been very effective. I also think some other skills that have nothing to do with that is just the people skills, learning, note taking, being able to ask the right questions. Those are some of the major skills. Also, just the education in general prepared me, and just the knowledge definitely helped as well on learning what these royalties are and just the basics. And then some other skills that I've learned from taking classes at Albright. I think, as I said, the people, the writing are the biggest ones. The just the critical thinking is a big one. And I think those are the main ones. And I'm sure we'll get more into it in the panel. Okay, internet streaming services operate digitally. Does this present issues when distributing royalties for US-based artists since our laws are different? So streaming services, when it comes to streaming services like Spotify and all of that, they do operate globally, but it doesn't mean that the songs are released globally. So some of those might not. Um, so there are, depending on what the situations are, the laws are a bit different, but more of just the amount of royalties that are distributed to those rights owners is different, not necessarily the type of license. Okay, there is a portion of the MMA that introduced the idea of recording artists receiving performance royalties as well as songwriters. So I know a big thing in there were for producers in the MMA were for producers to receive performance royalties. Recording artists are receiving performance royalties at the moment. So I believe producers, and I know that is added. I'll look more into the question that you have exactly, Kylie, though. Sampling is a lot different than mechanical licensing. So for sampling, you have to get rights from the master recording owner as well as additional rights. So it can get a little tricky. I highly suggest reaching out to the owner of that recording and working from there, because you'll have to get permission to use that song as well as the rights for mechanicals. So, I like this question. If you have had the chance to work with Sony instead of HFA, would I have taken the opportunity to work with Sony or stay with HFA? So that's a tough one. I do think about it. Where would I be if I took that other job or had that opportunity? I think I would have stayed with HFA just because I knew everyone and I was comfortable. But I guess it depended on what the role truly would have been. But yeah, I think right now where I am, I'm glad I chose HFA. And then any advice that I have for people starting off as interns? Plenty. Be friends with the other interns. That's the biggest one. They're all going to be a part of the industry soon. And it's great to have them on your side. Work as hard as you possibly can. Don't be afraid to show off. Meet with your manager as much as you possibly can. And then the last thing that I'd say for that is to stay connected with everyone after you leave. And I guess not the last thing. The last thing now is to make sure that you stay in touch with people and ask a lot of questions. And again, work as hard as possible. Hard work pays off and kindness pays off. Be nice about things, be open about things. Be as honest as possible too. If you don't understand what someone's expressing to you or trying to explain to you, definitely get that clarity and make sure that you feel confident in what you're doing. And this is an experience where a lot of the time interns are not getting paid, or if they are, it's not as much as the other people around them. So definitely take advantage of the opportunity, work as hard as possible, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And in depending on what the company is like, definitely try to see if you're able to work with if you're able to do one-on-ones with other people in the company, ask them where they started and just try to get around the company to meet some other people. So I know I'm over time. I'm happy to answer more questions, but not sure what AJ would like.
Yeah, let's actually take one more. Pick your favorite one, and then if everyone could ask their favorite question during the panel discussion, that'll be perfect.
Awesome. Okay, let me read through. There's a few different ones. Okay. Oh, there are two that I might just quickly answer.
Go for it.
So the first one is about HFA. Do you need to be affiliated with or have your own publishing company in order to register your songs? So you don't need to be affiliated with HFA to be able to register your songs, but you do need to have a publishing entity. For that, you can just use your own name. And in that case, you would use, I think it's your social security number, set it up as there is a W-2 form that you submit, and that's all you need to be able to create that account and register your songs. And then the last one that I'm going to answer is that someone went back to the 4th annual Music Business Forum that I spoke about the importance of confidence. Has there been a moment early in your career where I didn't capitalize on the opportunity due to a lack of confidence? Definitely. And I still deal with that today. I think sometimes it's hard to be confident in moments where you're unsure of yourself or unsure of what situation it could be in. There have been moments where I could have talked to people and didn't. And that was definitely something that I look back on. And there are still moments today where there are some people in Warner that are just so big in the company that I could be meeting with that I don't always capitalize on that opportunity just because I'm kind of newer in the company. But now I've kind of taken that approach and I am more confident than ever and will be happy to jump into someone's office and ask them the questions that I need. So it was definitely something tough. And I know there have been multiple times where I've sent an email instead of setting up a call or different things that I think you could do to just make a moment better, and highly suggest staying confident and knowing that you're capable of doing the thing that you want to do and work hard. So that is my last bit until the panel.
Thanks
So
so much, Brianna. Amazing presentation as always. I'm
thanks.
excited to talk to you later. And again, if anyone has questions later, please submit it to the Q&A on Zoom. Thank you all for visiting us for the first half of the day. Our Zoom attendees and our YouTube attendees all live. We're going to take a brief intermission until 1 o'clock. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.